Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahawashi, Bahashem, Barakah Kodash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh Bahashem Yahawashi. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule and teach well. And peace and salutations to Ya'akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Ra'aya with another video, and I'm going to start it off with an article from CNN.com titled, U.S. Announces Troop Drawdown in Iraq. The U.S. commander in the Middle East announced Wednesday a drawdown of U.S. troops in Iraq from 5,200 to 3,000 in the month of September. This reduced footprint allows us to continue advising and assisting our Iraqi partners in rooting out the final remnants of ISIS in Iraq and ensuring its enduring defeat, which on a quick side note is all BS. ISIS was nothing more than a proxy mercenary force used by the U.S. and the State of Israel to destabilize their enemies in the Middle East. General Frank McKenzie, commander of U.S. Central Command, said, McKenzie said the decision is due to the United States' confidence in the Iraqi security forces' increased ability to operate independently. A senior administration official told reporters on Tuesday to also expect an announcement on the troop withdrawal from Afghanistan in a couple of days. And to you people out there that are still holding out for the U.S. to completely withdraw from the Middle East, don't get your hopes up. It's biblical prophecy for the United States military to be in the Middle East to take part in the upcoming battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, the War of Armageddon, that third woe, which is going to take place after the Mark of the Beast, which is the RFID/NFC microchip implant, is mandatorily implemented. And there's going to be mass death, destruction, and misery for U.S. military personnel in the Middle East during the battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat. This is Joel chapter 2, verse 20. But I will remove far off from you the Northern Army, the North American Army, the United States military, all branches, the Marines, the Navy, the Air Force, Army, etc., etc., and will drive him into a land barren and desolate. And what does that sound like? The deserts of the Middle East. And the main staging ground for this upcoming battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat is going to be Saudi Arabia. Here's a map of the Middle East. There's Saudi Arabia. And where it says, with his face toward the East Sea, what's east of Saudi Arabia? To the northeast, you've got Iraq and the Tigris and Euphrates River and the Persian Gulf. And what's above the Persian Gulf? Iran, the main target of the U.S. and the State of Israel in the Middle East. And where it says his hinder part toward the utmost sea, that's behind him, or the Red Sea. And his stink shall come up, and his ill savor shall come up, because he had done great things. And like I just said, there's going to be mass death, destruction, and misery for the U.S. military personnel that are in the Middle East during this battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat. If you're there when it takes place, you better start coming to terms with the fact that that's going to be your final resting place. This is 2nd Esdras chapter 16. I'm going to read verse 33 to 34. The virgins shall mourn, having no bridegrooms. The women shall mourn, having no husbands. Their daughters shall mourn, having no helpers. All these women mourning due to the lack of men. In the wars shall their bridegrooms be destroyed. The battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, that War of Armageddon, the third woe, World War III, which will be nuclear, and the draft will also be reinstated. So a lot of you men in the U.S. are going to get drafted and go fight and die over in a foxhole in the Middle East. And their husbands shall perish of famine. And to you men in the U.S. that avoid the draft, it's not going to be much better in the U.S. There's going to be martial law on the streets of America with foreign and mercenary troops putting people down dead like dogs. There's going to be even more pestilences killing people off, race wars, civil wars, and as it just said, their husbands shall perish of famine, mass starvation. It's going to get so bad that people are going to start eating the flesh off of their own bodies. And the reason that Yahweh Bahashim Yahushai is not only gathering the U.S. military, but all other heathen militaries down into the Middle East for this battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat is because it's all judgment from Yahweh Bahashim Yahushai on you heathen nations for touching or afflicting the apple of his eye, the true children of Israel, who are the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, as well as the Israelite foreigners who look like these heathen nations. This is Joel chapter 3. I'm going to start at verse 1. For behold, in those days and in that time, and we're living in these days and times right now, the last seconds of these last days before the second coming of Yahushai HaMashiach, whom the world ignorantly refers to as so-called Jesus Christ, who's returning to save the elect of his people and his people only, as well as putting the final nail in the coffin of the rulership of the heathen nations, chiefly the Edomites, or the so-called white people, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah, the southern kingdom, or the so-called Negroes, your so-called African Americans, Haitians, Dominicans, West Indies, etc., etc., and Jerusalem, the northern kingdom, or the so-called Latinos and Native Americans, the elect from all 12 tribes coming back together and hearkening back unto their power, Yahweh Bahashim Yahushai. That's why you're seeing these Israelite camps pop up not only in the U.S., but all across the planet, preaching this word, waking up the rest of the elect, and condemning you heathen nations, as well as 2/3 of you Israelites who are hard-headed and refuse to hearken back unto your power, Yahweh Bahashim Yahushai. Verse 2, I will also gather all nations, these heathen nations, all your militaries, and you can go to Psalms chapter 83 to see the table of heathen nations that confederated themselves against the nation of Israel to try to cut them off from being a people. The Edomites, who are at the top of the list, the Moabites, the so-called Chinese, the Ishmaelites, the so-called Arabs, Hamites, the so-called Africans, the Ammonites, the so-called Japanese, etc., etc., and will bring them down into the Valley of Jehoshaphat, and Jehoshaphat means Yahweh Shaphat, or Yahweh's judgment, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage, Israel. And that word plead doesn't mean that the Most High is coming with a box of chocolates to ask you heathens politely to let his people go. When we go to that word plead in the Strongs, it's Strong's H 8199.
Strong's H 8199. Shaphat. Shaphat.
Shaphat, to judge, govern, vindicate, punish. Again, you heathens are being gathered down into the Valley of Jehoshaphat to be judged and punished by Yahweh Bahashim Yahushai for afflicting the apple of his eye, the children of Israel. And that chief culprit is you Edomites, who are still afflicting Jake to this very day. You put Planned Parenthoods into our neighborhoods to advocate for our women to get abortions. You give us poisonous food and water to eat and drink. These cops gun down our men, women, and children down dead like dogs in the streets of America. And you give us a so-called black culture and thug culture to completely ruin the people's minds and turn them into brute beasts and animals. You Edomites got a lot to pay for. Whom they have scattered among the nations, talking about the transatlantic slave trade, when you Edomites, Ishmaelites, and Hamites got together to sell into slavery the southern kingdom from the west coasts of Africa to the Americas, and you European Edomites in America sold the so-called Latinos and Native Americans into slavery in Europe and other nations across the planet, and parted my land. And it's easy to see that the land of Israel is parted amongst these heathen nations to this day, between those Amalekite Edomites calling themselves Israelis and those Ishmaelite so-called Arabs calling themselves Palestinians. And they have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for an harlot, and sold a girl for wine, that they might drink. And what does that sound like? Slavery. Now I'm going to jump down to verse 9. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, which is what the men of the Lord, the prophets of the Most High, chiefly through GMS or Great Millstone, are doing by going out onto the highways and byways preaching this word, as well as putting up video epistles like this. Prepare war, the battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, the War of Armageddon, war with Iran, World War III, nuclear war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near from these heathen nations, let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears, let the weak say I am strong. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Yahweh, and those mighty ones are the death angels of the Most High, holding back all this destruction until they get the go-ahead from the Most High to release it. Let the heathen be wakened and come up to the Valley of Jehoshaphat, Yahweh's Shaphat, or Yahweh's judgment, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. Put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come, get you down, for the press is full. The fats overflow, for their wickedness is great. Multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of Yahweh is near in the valley of decision, and it's very near in the valley of Yahweh's judgment. That's it with this video. So to you sincere Akim out there, now more than ever you should have all 10 toes down in this truth, pushing this word as hard as you possibly can. We can clearly see that these end times prophecies are beginning to come to their fulfillment, and you definitely want to have that protective hedge of Yahweh Bahashim Yahushai over you for when Jacob's trouble really pops off. And to you heathen nations and hard-headed 2/3 Israelites out there who refuse to return to your power, it's about to be judgment time. So with this video, I hope you sincere Akim were edified, and as always, I'm going to say Abad Babol, Kwam Yasharala, and until next time, Shalom.